Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the FPV News with JB and ItsBlunty. Good evening, Blunty. How are you?
Good evening, Joshua. How's it going?
I'm doing really
Doing good.
well. I'm doing really well. We have quite a salacious topic tonight. Anytime you talk about latency of SharkByte and DJI, the people are going to come out. In fact, you and I have been talking about that for like the last half hour of what we're going to say about it. I don't want to spoil
Yes.
anything, but but before we get into that, let's welcome everybody in the chat as well. Good to see you guys. Thank you for coming out. I'm glad to be here. I was feeling a little under the weather, and I took yesterday's live stream. Got some extra rest, but I'm feeling good tonight.
Nice.
Oh, and I'm drinking. Oh, people don't like it when I drink soda on stream because then I'm slurping in the microphone. What are you gonna do? You never drink on stream. You never have a drink when you're here. You just go dry mouth the whole time.
Yeah, I have a drink. I just rarely sipping.
There you go. People in the chat say Henry needs his own YouTube channel. I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard that.
No, it's not. Henry doesn't do much.
Oh, you need
I guess
you need like the Henry webcam. You know, like there used to be webcams for like a coffee pot. Doesn't matter if he doesn't do anything.
It's just Henry's, wherever he is all the time.
No, it's just like this could work. You make a YouTube channel that is Henry's bed. It's just a camera pointed at his dog bed. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Open it only. You need to, OnlyFans has shifted their business model. They're going for non-adult stuff. And what is more non-adult than Henry? He needs an OnlyFans.
Yeah, I'm sure he's good for advertisers. I'm sure they would love Henry.
He's very advertiser friendly. No, I'm not sick, everybody. I just need a little extra sleep. You know how it is. I'm feeling good. And I'm glad you guys are here. DMOC86 in the Discord asking, how many FPV cycle motors did I get? Only 10. Actually, they sold out. And I said to Kebab, I said, any chance you... Because Kebab was holding the first batch for people who were getting replacements from his original batch, which had the defects. Good for him. He's a real mensch. I said, Kebab, any chance you could hold some for me? He was like, I already did. I was going to get more than 10, but I appreciate it. Here's what we got, guys. Check it out. Here's y'all. Here you are. I'm reading your chats. This is the news stream, so we're not going to do as much Q&A. But I'll be reading them, and I'll respond when I can. If you want to make sure I respond, hit the $sign, leave a super chat. We will get the super chat, although it might be towards the end of the stream. And thank you so much. Couldn't start a live stream without saying thank you to the folks over here on the Discord server. These are my patrons. If you want to join the Discord server, you can become a patron with the link in the video description. Just a couple bucks a month or more if you feel like I've earned it. It's totally up to you. They're beautiful people. They're wonderful people. Such good people. The best people. Oh my God, I sound like... Never mind. I also want to point out, before we get into this, Quick Flash in the chat. Thank you, Quick Flash, for being here. He is Kevin Plaisir, the lead Emuflight dev. And Emuflight 040 is one of the topics that we've got on deck this month. But if you want to ask him questions about Emuflight here in the chat, he's right here, and you don't have to wait till we get to it. What have we got on deck this month, Blunty? Take us through it.
All right, so we're going to talk about TBS finally merging FreedomTX to OpenTX and EdgeTX soon after that, which is, I think we were all waiting on that. That's pretty exciting. The Orqa controller and new goggles have been shown, a couple sets of goggles, so we'll review that. And then also in Orqa news, they've announced a final update for their FPV.One goggles, so we'll go over that and what that will mean. We're going to talk about a naked Blackmagic camera is now impossible after the last firmware, it looks like. Mm-hmm. The Pigeon Frame is going to be affected by that, so we'll go over that and how maybe you can try to help.
Yeah, important for people who do kind of Cinelifter stuff. Maybe not so much for the people who do just regular GoPro FPV.
Yeah. Emuflight is now out in 040. We just mentioned Kevin Plaisir, so we're excited to see that. We'll go over the changelog a little bit. Quicksilver has now been publicly forked by Not Fast Enough. So if you were looking for Quicksilver, that project's been kind of dead for a while on hiatus. So Not Fast Enough has forked that. We'll talk about that. There's a new entry into the things JB said were impossible. We'll look at a electronically ducted fan quad.
Yeah, so. Things I say can't be done, and then people go out and do them. For the record, I say a lot of things, and I'm often right, but people seem to really enjoy it when I go, I don't think you can do that, and then someone does it.
DJI, you can't make a really light VTX and do canvas mode.
I didn't say they can't do it. I said it was nearly impossible.
Well, no, I'm saying now we could say that. So it was just
I see. So they'll do it. I see. No, I like that. That was clickbait anyway. You weren't supposed to take it seriously. Jeez.
We'll do a global qualifier update. We'll look at there's only 2 weeks left to the global qualifier, so we'll look at the top 2 runs DVR. Talk a little bit about that. There's a new event coming up called Drones in the Desert, so we'll talk about that real quick. That's a pretty neat little race and stuff. And then we'll talk about our controversial topic of the week, which is our SharkByte latency versus DJI versus analog.
Put that in the last topic. The last item on our list is if we're going to do like a sort of a ranty, like go off the rails one, we put it last. By the way, and I want to say, we're not putting it last just because that's the one you most want to hear and we want you to stick around till the end. We don't do that. And you could vouch me on this, Blunty. Oftentimes I say, that's the most interesting one. Let's put it near the front.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to front load the stuff that people want to see, so we don't like force you to be here if you don't want to be. But yeah, sometimes when the rants go off or we don't know when we're going to stop, then...
Yeah, we don't know if this will be ranty, but it might be. So,
yeah.
Anyway, let's start with a great piece of news here. TBS merging FreedomTX into OpenTX. Here's why this is a big deal, in case that headline alone didn't make your nipples stand on end. Freedom TX is what runs on the Mambo and the Tango 2. It's a lot like OpenTX, but it's not OpenTX, and as a result, you cannot use OpenTX Companion to flash and back it up, and you cannot easily move models from Freedom TX to OpenTX. And now that when they are merged, you will be able to do those things.
Yeah. Also the fact that like Freedom TX is kind of its own brand, so sometimes it didn't have everything. And yeah, just now you don't have to worry about any of that. All the development will happen inside of OpenTX, hopefully.
Right.
Moving forward, that's kind of the plan. And then, so your Tango 2 and your Mambo will be able to be flashable with OpenTX. They'll hopefully start shipping with those fairly soon here now that that is committed. And then also I talked to the EdgeTX developers, and they are working with basically TBS said as soon as we're done, then we'll take care of you guys. So now they're moving to EdgeTX and making sure that also has support. So as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's, as you said, it's also good because like there were like Ghost support is one of the things that comes to mind. Ghost released a version of OpenTX that they built Ghost support in. Now, Ghost is currently in an official release of OpenTX, so it's not an issue. But when Ghost first came out, if you had an OpenTX radio, boom, you could download this custom build that Immersion RC gave you, and you could start using it. But if you had one of these TBS radios, they didn't release, I don't think they released support for it, and you were just kind of out of luck. So now it's all rolled into one, and that's good.
Yeah, the Mambo, from my understanding, the Mambo was originally supposed to be was supposed to ship with OpenTX, and then it ended up like last minute they ended up shipping with EdgeTX because they just weren't ready, or with Freedom TX because it just wasn't ready. So, but now, yeah, my understanding is everything will shift into that. All the development will work on OpenTX and EdgeTX moving forward. So.
Okay, great. Well, bye-bye Freedom TX. You know, you filled a role, and now we don't need you anymore. Filled the role of the OpenTX devs being super slow to merge new stuff. Now, hopefully, EdgeTX will fill that role. But good news for anybody who owns a Tango or a Tango 2 or a Mambo. All right. Next up, Blunty, what do we got? Some Orqa news. Yes,
so Orqa teased some stuff from the drone expo that they were a part of, or for I guess the general expo, but the AUVSI, the AUSI Exponential. And so they showed this new controller, which in this Facebook post, we get confirmation basically from a couple of different people that this has Ghost inside of it. So this will be a Ghost integrated RC, a radio.
That makes sense given how Orqa and Immersion RC work together in various ways.
Yeah, and then
they're very close.
We've also got some more shots. And that's showing the V2 version of the FPV.One goggles. So these will be the sequel with, I guess, better internals. And then the Pro version of the goggles, which are the ones we saw pretty early on in some like military advertising and different things. So.
Now this is the V2. I see. So those aren't the same goggles because this just looks like an FPV.One in gray.
Yeah, they're just the V2 version of the FPV.One. So very similar, but my understanding is just an upgraded internal. I don't think they've released a lot of details, just pictures and speculation at this point.
And for given what I saw at CES, when I went and visited, they had a booth. I think it was at CES, if my memory's correct. But I went and visited them before the goggles were released, and they had a quote-unquote prototype, which was basically just like a 3D printed shell and some screens. It didn't even have a control board, a DVR board. It could display an image, and it had the optics module, but it was very, very far from a prototype. So for all I know, that's just an empty shell. Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's what they're showing right now. And that kind of leads us into our next story.
Yes.
So Orqa has announced that they have issued the final update for the FPV.One goggles. That's their quote here. So they said that a little while back, and everybody was a little bit confused. So they put out a clarifying statement.
I'm not sure the clarifying statement helps much, to be honest. But here it is.
It basically says their final update for the goggles means that every new product and accessory will be interoperable and compatible with the original model. For 2 years, they've been releasing updates. The final update means they've basically run the hardware to the ground. So they say it's like when you have limited RAM or disk space and you can't install a new program, they've just like hit the edge of the goggle, and that's all they could do. So their firmware team has invested as much as possible into those goggles, and they basically hit that final update for the goggles. So it sounds like if they release an HD system or something similar, that it will be compatible with the goggle. But for the internals of the goggle, they've kind of hit the limit, and now there won't be any like crazy new developments. Like maybe like that new GoPro feature we saw. I don't think we'll see anything new like that in the V1 goggle moving forward.
Now, here's what, and unfortunately, do we have the link to this action? No, we just have the imager. So be it. Because there are a lot of people asking for things that some might call a feature request and some might call a bug fix. Things like have the fan automatically start and stop running using the face detector. That's pretty cool. Like it has a face detector. It can turn the screens off when you take the goggles off your face. And people want the fan to automatically start and stop. Well, that'd be pretty cool, but there's been no indication that they'll do it, and people have been asking for it for a while. There are some others that I kind of wanted to look down in the chat and see them because I'm sure they're there, but I don't have it handy. And so what people are wondering is, like, are you, it's one thing to say we're not going to do any major new features for this, but what about these little feature requests that people still want? Are they saying, yeah, well, screw you? And I know you don't know. I don't know either.
Right.
It seems like they might be saying screw you.
It does seem like they're saying like, hey, we're not trying to do anything more for that goggle. And it might be translation issues where they're saying like, hey, that's fine.
No, like I'm sorry. Surgeon speaks great English. You know, I'm not going to let him off the hook that easy.
Okay.
He speaks great English. No, okay. No offense. No offense.
Then if that's what they really mean, then it doesn't sound like they're doing any changes. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, I see two sides of this argument, and I definitely feel like Surgeon's response is very sort of CEO speak, where he's trying to push his narrative, which is the most positive narrative for his company. People bought the Orqa goggles, and one of the promises the Orqa goggles made was that they were going to be upgradable. And they said they're more expensive, but we're using a general purpose processor that will let us add features. And to their credit, they did. They added, if you bought a set of Fat Shark HDOs, how many feature updates did you get? 0. You got what you got, and that was it. And you had those goggles for, maybe you still have them. You've had them for 5 years, and you're happy with them. So the argument that, hey, we released major new features for 2 years, and now we got to call it done and move to the next. But then if you bought it, and it's only been 2 years, and suddenly you're out, I understand why you're a little annoyed.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see being frustrated, especially if you bought these in like the last few months or something like that.
Because not everybody bought them when they first came out. Good point.
Yeah. I mean, they're still selling them too. So presumably people will buy them without knowing that, hey, these have already gotten the last software update. So yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, if they say they're limited and they can't do anything else, then to me, I hope that means that there's another piece here where they can still do other feature changes. It's just not like, hey, nothing new's coming. No new feature set is coming, but maybe we could change things or adjust things or fix your bugs. So I'm just hoping, I want to put the benefit that,
Yeah. I saw one suggestion that they open source the code. If you're not going to update the software anymore, why not open source it? Because somebody said, well, if you're out of memory, for example, which that's not exactly what he said. He said it's like when you're out of disk space. But say they're out of memory. Well, you could do like OpenTX does and let people compile in or out features that they do or don't want. And I'm 100% sure if they were to open source the code, somewhere out there's some developers who'd be like, yeah, let's put this new feature in, and they just do it. Yeah.
I don't need the GoPro control. Let me remove that, and then I can patch in a new thing that I want. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's been no indication that they'll do any of that. And I agree with you. That's a good point. That if you bought them, 4 months ago, 6 months ago, and you got this, okay, I'm going to spend more for them, but they're upgradable. Well, actually, you got in at the end of the development cycle. They've already been upgraded, and you're not getting anything new. I could see that being a little annoying.
Yeah.
Anyway, good news. Maybe Orqa V2s are right on the horizon. I mean, it'd be stupid of them to announce that they were ending support for the V1s and not have the V2s ready to go, right?
I would assume so. I think this shows the first we've seen of them, but hopefully that means that, they've got something planned. So.
Okay. All right. Well, that's that. Next up, we have a little bit of a weird one. This one goes back to a frame we covered on the new product roundup, which was the Pigeon Frame. And the Pigeon Frame is not for a naked GoPro, but a naked Blackmagic cinema. Tell us about that, Blunty.
Yeah, so basically, we talked about this before, but basically this guy had a Blackmagic 4K and really wanted to fly it on a quad. And so he built, designed, figured out everything behind, like how to take it apart. He like pioneered the process himself. He used multiple Blackmagic cameras to do it. He designed the whole frame around it. You know, basically all this kind of different things, right? And essentially, you know, that's the basis of the idea. And unfortunately, Blackmagic has released an update. In May 2021, it looks like they started shipping cameras with these, and also that they provided an update that doesn't let you roll back, and it will not allow the camera to boot with the screen not attached. So basically, any version of Naked at all that you do will not boot and will not work at all.
Yeah, so I've got a picture here. This is the Pigeon Frame. It's from rotorbuilds.com. Someone built one of these. And you can see here's a Blackmagic camera, just from the Blackmagic. Well, this is the 6K, not the 4K, but you get the idea. It is a not quite a cinema camera. I think most people would say it's close, but not quite. But Pigeon has basically taken the sensor off. He's got the lens mounted here, got the screen detached, and he sort of mounted it into a quadcopter frame. Pretty freaking cool. Here's what's left. Here's some of the work. This is not Pigeon's. Unless this is his build. I'm not sure about that. Maybe it is his build. A lot of work taking the guts out of the camera. And we can see in this video, which is linked in the video description below. By the way, we've got links to all the stuff we talk about in the show notes down below. A video calling for help of how to deal with this. Because if you are the kind of guy who flies a cinema camera, this was a real great solution for you. And now they've just basically taken it away. Bad for Life says Blackmagic is a cinema camera. All right, I'm not sure where the line is, but okay. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two things here. One is that hopefully Blackmagic will hear some outcry. So I think he's kind of asking that, hey, like email their support, you know, make sure their support's like has a bunch of these messages in it, and maybe make videos about it or post on social media or whatever. Just like make sure that somebody there that's not a random support employee understands that this is a problem and like, hey, did you mean to do this? That being said, if that's the case, I think the other option is to like try to wrangle some open source support to find a way to roll these back or do some sort of flashing or you know, make it so they can still use this. Because unfortunately, you know, over a year, this guy's life has gone into this frame and this work and changes, and you know, there's a lot of time spent in this, thousands of hours.
Well, it's not just about Pigeon and the Pigeon frame. Not that that doesn't matter, but it's about the other professionals out there using the Blackmagic and using the Pigeon frame. And Blackmagic is just taking that away from their own customers. It's not like this is people cracking their product and taking money out of their hands, out of their pockets. They bought the camera and now they're using it in a way. And the big question, I think, is whether Blackmagic has done this on purpose or whether someone at Blackmagic was like, hey, should we let the camera boot up if the screen's disconnected? No, we shouldn't do that. And they did it without realizing. I mean, the camera may just think it's broken.
Yeah, maybe they changed the piece of the board, or maybe they, you know, and had to update for that, or whatever happened. But it is unfortunate. So if you're interested in helping, there's a link in his YouTube video for an email address and stuff. Maybe reach out to them and just tell people about this. Because I think, again, like, if they didn't mean to do this, I'm sure if there's enough outcry, it'll get changed. But it is unfortunate.
Yep. Everything they've done could be innocuous. They probably don't even know the Pigeon exists. So this is probably a case where they made some change, it had an unintended effect, and with luck, hopefully there will be a way they can make it work around. But for now, Pigeon needs your help. Link in the video description, or to the video, and a call to action about what you should do. Basically, you should go message support. And listen, even if you don't fly this frame, and if you don't use this camera, go watch the video, see how you feel about what's being said, and see if you feel like you should take action. Right. Yeah. And go to the support link. All right.
Absolutely.
Good luck to the Pigeon about that. All right. Next up.
All right. Emuflight has finally released 040, their largest release in a while.
Couldn't be
That's pretty
1.0.
exciting.
Come on, Kevin. When are we going to get 1.0?
I think that's when they do the merge with 4.3. Is that right? So they're like waiting on Betaflight 4.3 because
It's going to be a while.
Yes. I think that's
just
the
like
case.
round numbers. I like round numbers.
If he's still in the chat, maybe he can confirm that. But I think that was the whole thing with 1.0.
Go ahead. Sorry, Blunty. I was ranted, just being dumb, and you actually knew what you were talking about. I'll let you continue.
No problem. So this is a major feature release. If you scroll down, there'll be a set of features there. So they've added a motor output mixer to change some motor output settings that weren't there before. They've added features for thrust linearization, axis lock. They've added a Emu gravity feature, which is like an anti-gravity boosting. New filtering, smooth predictors on the gyro, yaw feed forward. There's a lot of different things here that they've added. So I think a lot of people will see stuff here that they're excited about.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the couple large things I read about, but there's a lot here.
Yeah, one of the things that gets me about this is that so much of it is behind the scenes ways of making the quad fly better that are very difficult to verify and test and experience people will fly Emu and go, oh, yeah, it's flying really good. But that's such a vague thing.
Yes.
And the sort of scientist, if I could call myself that, not everyone would feel that I should. and the content creator me is like, well, how can I test these things and see them in action and then tune them? And like, there's a lot here, and I wouldn't even know where to begin tuning some of this stuff and playing with it and using it. So you just are it feels like you're in a position where you fly it, you go, oh, it flies pretty good. Which of this stuff, like the filtering, the Smith predictor, angle mode 2.0, an improvement in angle mode. Oh, brought on by the linchpin. That's very interesting. Oh, we've got kiss rates and actual rates. That's my brain can comprehend that. Some new filtering on the IMUF, updated Kalman filter. Some new PT filtering. Lots of new filtering. Yeah, it seems like it's a lot of filtering and mixer stuff that will make the quad fly better under the hood, but not a lot of sort of user-facing stuff.
Yeah. Pretty exciting for those that fly Emuflight. And if you haven't, maybe it's the time to try it out. So.
Yeah, we got to give it a try. Let's see. Defaults are possibly over-filtered. Tune filters as needed. Are there sliders? Hey, quick flash. Are there sliders for the ABG filter? I don't know what an ABG filter is, and I sure as hell don't know how to tune it. You got sliders for me, man? Just like more, less. I don't know. Typical me. Just complaining about something I don't have. All right,
I think they have presets over there.
He says filter sliders are silly. I knew he would say that. They do have presets, it's true. Presets are silly. Oh, here's a preset. It only works for my quad. Anyway, he says just raise the cutoffs if you need to move it. All right, well, if you've got Emuflight and you haven't upgraded, this is a major release, so it's time to upgrade. And if you have been wanting to try Emuflight, or here's what I say. If you've got a problem quad with like mid-throttle oscillations, or it just doesn't fly right, or you're just curious, there's no downside to flashing Emuflight. It's supported on all Betaflight flight controllers. And, just flash it, set it up, and see if it flies better. Yeah. Give it a try.
Quick Flash says, just raise cutoffs if you need to move it. Maybe there's a cutoff slider.
Yeah, well, the reason the Betaflight devs went to filter sliders, I think one of the reasons is that the filters are dynamic. So there's a max and a min, and knowing how to sort of change them is non-intuitive. But the other thing with the sliders is you have multiple cascading filters. So you've got a PT1 and a PT2, and then on D-term you've got the same. And the relationship between those two filters is also not intuitive if you're not a science nerd. So just being able to move a filter slider and they move together, I think it's works for me, but I'm dumb.
Yeah.
So, all right, Emuflight 040 is here. Well, we've got another piece of news that is sort of vaguely Emuflight related, and that relates to Quicksilver. Now, when you said Quicksilver, Blunty, I thought you were talking about Silverware, which is a tiny whoop focused firmware favored by racers. And it ties to Emuflight in my mind because Emuflight has borrowed a lot of features from Silverware. And in fact, if you fly tiny whoops, Emuflight is probably going to fly better than Betaflight because of the things they've borrowed from Silverware. But we're talking about Quicksilver, and I'm not even sure who that is. And NFE is that new place where you can pay $70,000 for a JPEG. So I'm not even sure how that's relevant. No, that's an NFT. I'm sorry. That's an NFT. Yeah, who is NFE and what is Quicksilver?
So NFE is not fast enough. I know he's been working on a lot of angle code and different things for a while. And he has released, basically, he forked. So this guy, Boss Hobby, a while back made Quicksilver. Quicksilver was based on Silverware. So Silverware is by Silver 13. Silver 13 make Silverware. That was pulled into Quicksilver by this guy, Boss Hobby. So basically, from that has been inactive for a while. It kind of got dropped by Boss Hobby and the crew there. Mm-hmm. So that got pushed to not fast enough, and he forked it, and now he's actively working on it. And basically, he's going to work on it until the people come back for the main fork. Then we'll pass it back. But now there's like an active fork of Quicksilver, which is basically an active fork of Silverware, sort of.
Okay. So this is does this run on Betaflight boards or on Silverware boards?
That I'm not sure.
I think that's a big one. I don't know either. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Blunty. Because Silverware only runs on Silverware flight controllers, not on Betaflight flight controllers. It's a different processor.
So they've got like Flywheel F411, FPV Cycle 411, Maytech F405.
Okay, so those are Betaflight boards.
Yeah, there's quite a few Betaflight boards here, it looks like.
Okay, so it is running. It's not running on. It's compiled for.
Yeah, it may be a limited subset, but it does look like it is running on some modern boards.
Okay, all right. Just F4 boards, says QuickFlash. Only F4s. But if it only ran on Silverware boards, there are relatively few Silverware flight controllers out there, I think, or maybe I just don't know about them. But if it runs on Betaflight F4 boards, then I think there's a lot more people out there who might decide that they want to give it a try. And if you got tiny whoops, it's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, quick flash. Someone in the Discord. I don't normally, just relay messages between people, but for a patron in the Discord, I will do it this one time. He says, "Can you ask Kevin when Emuflight will have Express LRS support for SPI receivers? Just got the Happy Model Express LRS whoop board, and I want to run Emu on it." You can answer in the chat. Quick flash. All right.
Solving problems.
Well, we've got a new entry. Damn it! Now is the entry where I will embarrass myself, and I want to tell you, Blunty, I haven't watched this video yet, so you can get my live reaction to it. The thing I said was impossible is a while back somebody asked me, "Can you build a quadcopter with EDF turbines?" Are you familiar with those at all?
A little bit, but I just know sort of them, but I've never seen them in use really. So
yeah, and I don't either. But it's a style of engine that's used on radio controlled jets. It's not a jet engine; it's a turbine engine. And my understanding is that I remember this from my days as a fixed wing pilot. They would talk about the pros and cons of props versus EDF. One of the characteristics of EDFs is that they do not spool up and down very quickly. And, you'll hear them start up and they'll go, whee, and it sounds really awesome. And somebody asked me, can you build a quadcopter with those? Because that'd be pretty cool. And I was like, well, they can't change speed quickly. And that's the one thing a quadcopter motor needs to do. So I was like, I don't think you could do it. Or if you did, it wouldn't fly very well. But apparently, that's not true.
Well, it's a quad mover. So if it's going to move as much as it can move.
I know, and I'm terrified because Quad Mover, his quads, they go. So if there was one person on Earth who I would think would not be happy with a EDF turbine, we're going to look and we're going to see. And we'll get Here, wait a second. We'll get my reaction. Where is it? Here. Or turn on my face cam so we can get my reaction in real time. Let's see. Can I do audio? What the frick, Quad Mover? What the frick is this? So here are the turbines. You can see they're not like props, but they have a lot of little blades, and they're in a duct. Sounds like shit. I mean, there you go. It's flying. Okay. I mean, it's there. There you go. I don't know, man. Maybe these something different about EDFs. I just didn't think they would spool up and down very fast. Oh, that was some prop wash. Did you hear that? I mean, for Quad Mover, this is extremely tame flying, for the record. I can tell it's holding him back.
Yes.
I honestly didn't even think it would fly, though. I don't know. I didn't think they changed speed fast enough. Oh, listen to it, though. Do you hear that warble? I mean, it's flying, though. But why? Is there a point other than to say you did it?
I don't think so.
Okay. He said, oh, there you go. I've always wondered if it was possible. That's why he did it.
Well, that's Maker's News. That's Maker's
Oh,
News.
that's Maker's News. I'm sorry. That's not Quad Mover. Alrighty. Well, once again, I said something couldn't be done, and somebody proved me wrong. So keep it up. Yep. Vivo says it's just a turbine replacement for open props. It's just like ducted motors. I mean, what is the difference between an EDF? Is it just the duct and the fan blades that makes it an EDF? I don't know. I didn't know a lot about them. I just knew that they don't spin up very fast. Why don't jet EDF planes spin up very fast? You don't know. I don't know. Maybe the chat will tell us.
I definitely do not know. From one thing that is maybe slower than it normally would be, right? Because Quad Mover is a fast guy, to something that's pretty quick. We're going to look at the global qualifier update.
Oh, we're not going to just speculate about things we don't know about?
Oh.
For a while? No, it's fine. Let's move on. Oh, go ahead, Blunty.
All right. So, global qualifier, if you don't know, it's a big track that everybody sets up the same. And they all run and see who can get the best times. Your local chapter can only run it twice in the season. So you can't just sit there and grind it every weekend. But I thought it would be fun to take a look at the two people that are under 30 seconds on the global qualifier.
And that's 30 seconds. That's 3 laps.
Yes, 3 laps. So, that's correct.
Who do you want to look at first, Evan or Levi?
Oh, let's do Evan, because I've linked the wrong thing for Levi. So.
Okay, I'm going to do Evan. Evan is currently in second place.
Yes.
29.8, best 3 consecutive. And by the way, the local guys can grind it as much as they want. It's just the times don't count until you officially say this is our GQ. For the record, Evan's been out there grinding the shit out of this. All right.
Sure.
But here is his lap. Ready? Boom. Here we go. No, this is not sped up. That's just how fast he is. It's so, I can't even see it happening. It's so fast. This is like the one person who I'm like, yeah, maybe he needs 120 FPS. Like, it feels like most people don't need the extra frames, but geez, he is so fast.
I mean, it definitely looks like it's in fast forward. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at his battery. 19.0. 20. He's done. MC's Creation says BMS Thomas seems faster, though. MC's Creations, I think it's really interesting that the overall lap time doesn't necessarily relate to who looks the fastest. It can be about who's shaving. I mean, when you're down this fast, shaving fractions of a second on a turn can make or break you. So you have somebody who looks faster in the straights, but is actually slower because they're blowing out turns slightly. So, you know,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I mean, the other thought that I had was there could be small differences in the way individual chapters set up the track, that the track still passes the precision check, but maybe makes a tenth of a second or a 50/100th of a second difference. Of course, they'll all race at the finals, and then we'll find out who's fastest.
Yeah. All right. So I got Levi's video up there if you want to check that one out too.
Okay. Here comes the number one, who's even faster than Evan Turner. Go figure.
He's up in the corner there.
He's up in the upper right. Are they running the qualifier? They're running their qualifier 4 up?
Yeah,
That's
he almost
unusual.
hit somebody and ruined this.
Wow. I mean, I guess, no. I mean, I guess I'm sorry, you run qualifiers multiple up. I'm silly. It's just the practices you don't. Yeah. Of course you are. See, already Levi looks slower to me than Evan. I don't know what it is. Yeah. I would just gut feeling say this is slower. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the camera field of view. I mean, think about it, Blunty. Camera field of view could make you look slower, couldn't it?
Yeah, angle, field of view, and then I think just lines too. Like if you're one of those people who, like maybe you cut into the gate right away, or you flip around, or like I would imagine like where your camera goes, relatively speaking, might be different based on how you take the line.
Yeah. I want a pilot whose name is Land Now. You see these racers and their screen is just saying Land Now for like half the race. That's really
RX loss
interesting.
FPV.
Yeah, right. RX loss. He does look smoother. I agree, especially during right there. That was just super smooth. And when he does this right left, right there, that's just super smooth. I think Evan might be moving faster, but Levi is like cleaner. I don't know. I mean, he's not faster by much, is he? How much faster is he? 29.7, 29.87. So he's about a tenth faster. That's actually a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, whoops, wrong. There we go. Well, it's all up in the air when you get to finals, though. I mean, people just crash out. Who knows? So.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right. Well, good luck to everybody. They're running a qualifier here in Knoxville this weekend. I'll be going. I will not be that fast. But.
Yeah, if you're interested in running a GQ, there's 2 more weeks, and most places are running like a last minute, like, hey, we're doing it. Mm-hmm. So check in your area for those, because there were too many of them to list. I saw quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of leads into, talking about that, kind of leads into drones in the desert. So there's a new event coming up. I believe it's September the 4th. Yeah, September the 4th and the 5th here in Colorado, in Grand Junction. And this is actually an elevated race, so the winner of this will go to the Pro Championship. If you go in the discussion section and scroll down a little bit.
What does that mean? An elevated race? Explain that again.
I think they're seen as they're considered like a chapter that like has real races and people come. So like the winner of that will get a seed in the Pro Championship. That's my
guaranteed seed.
Yeah, if you're like an elevated chapter, like if you do elevated races, you can do that.
I wonder why Knoxville isn't an elevated chapter. We're important.
I have no idea how that works.
Okay, go ahead.
But basically, so I just wanted to mention that. So drones in the desert, if you real quick, if you click on discussion there, I couldn't find a way to link it directly, but and then scroll down just a little bit. The second post there has a list. If you see more, scroll up one more, and then see more on that post. There's a whole bunch of info.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a schedule and stuff, but they're doing this race here, so you can qualify into the pros. But they're also doing a DRSL race, so that's the drone, the DRL like street racer, the big 7-inch quads. They're doing a drone race and LED non-spec class race there at night too, from 9 to midnight. So seems like it'll be pretty cool. A couple days of racing.
Cool. And the winner gets a guaranteed seed into the finals, which is, of course, that's a big deal. Kind of regardless of your time, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's just like, hey, you've got enough. I think that's how they do it. Is like, hey, you've got enough people there, and they consistently show up and put times up that like you can be classed as this, and then we'll seed one of your people.
Gotcha. Maybe we are a elevated race. I don't know. Good point.
Yeah,
I wouldn't know. Vivo says, what are the tolerances of the track for MultiGP? Interesting question. The way that it's done, as I understand it, is they give you the track dimensions, and then they ask you to measure some diagonals, and obviously, if you didn't get the track dimensions right, then the diagonal of the triangle won't be right either, and so the diagonals have to be right within a certain tolerance. Blunty, is that right? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I imagine it's something. Got to be something like that, because I know I imagine if you have it messed up, like a lot of the numbers won't make sense. So.
Yeah. So they cross-check you. I mean, in theory, I've often thought, well, couldn't you just like measure it and then do trigonometry and lie and tell them what the number is if you wanted to cheat, which no one would do, of course. But assuming it's the honor system, they cross-check you by asking you for some diagonals. And then if the diagonals are right, they just say, okay, you're good.
Real quick, Agilis in the chat, I know he's a good source, says Ivan from Orqa has stated that support has not ended. Bug fixes will be implemented. So it sounds like full features.
Sure, but what's a bug fix? That's the question I go back to. I mean, some things are obviously bug fixes. Other things you could say, oh, that's not a bug fix. That's a feature request.
Sure. Well, that's still at least, that's better than, hey, we're not touching them again.
Yeah. Super Deluxe says no one wants to do trigonometry just to lie. I beg to differ. Obviously, there's no point in lying because once you get to the finals, you'll have to race against everybody on the same track. And if you suck, you suck. But there definitely, I can think of one case in the past, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to be accused of calling somebody out. But I can think of a case in the past where an up-and-coming pilot was putting in amazing times, and other people speculated that the tracks, that the pilot, they just looked at the tracks and they were like, those tracks look small to me. And this pilot never went to races. They just showed amazing times on their own tracks at practices. And then they got some sponsorships, and the company that was sponsoring them was all like, oh, check this pilot out. They're so fast. And people were like, well, why aren't they going to races? And their times were ridiculously good. And so there might be a motivation to make somebody look faster than they were. That's all I'm saying. So that'd be an easy, trig isn't that hard, is all I'm saying. Okay.
The moral of the story is Josh was good at math.
I did some algebra on the live stream on Sunday. I did some algebra. As far as I can tell, I got it right.
Nice.
Anyway. All right. Last up in our last segment is going to be these latency test results for SharkByte and DJI. But before I do that, let me get some of these super chats out of the way. Andrea Boneshi, thank you for £449. Thanks for the help provided with the flight controller not entering DFU mode. Glad I was able to help you with that. Darshan Srikumar, thank you for $5 New Zealand dollars. What do you think about 2208 1800 kV motors for a 6-inch Apex 700 gram all-up weight? That seems okay to me. 2208 that's pretty good. A 2306 or 2207 will swing a 6-inch prop, but maybe you want a little bigger motor for a little more authority. 2208 is a little bigger, and 700 grams is not that heavy. So I'd be happy with that, assuming you're running 6S. You might go a little lower KV if you want a little longer flight time, but it's going to be fine. Daniel Carroll, thank you for $499 US dollars. If I'm running the FPV Cycle 30 millimeter 1450 kV motors on 8S on a 7-inch build, will I blow a 65 amp ESC at full throttle? I have no idea. I cannot even begin to answer that question. I don't own any 8S quads. I've never run an 8S quad, and I don't have many 7-inch builds either. If in doubt, get the bigger ESC. Right, Blunty?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
And if somebody knows, it's going to be Bob. So ask Bob.
Yeah, ask Bob. I mean, the thing is, no one can even answer that question, I think, because we don't know the all-up weight of your build, and the all-up weight affects your peak amps.
Sure.
the bottom line is that it's probably the difference between 65 and 80 amps. That's only a 15 amp difference. So there is no set of real world conditions where anyone could say, yes, 100% you're going to blow a 65 amp ESC, but an 80 amp is going to be fine. It's just about how much headroom you want. Or you're way past even 80 amps and you need to go much bigger, but I don't think that's the case. So I would get the 80 amp. If you fly casually, you might get away with a 65, but neither of them's good, or it's just a matter of, that's what I say. Ask Bob. Mix Wiz, thanks for a $5 super chat. What do you do to manage your clips from DVR, GoPro, etc. when you get home? What I do, I can show you this. What I do, if we look here in this basement PID tune, is I just have folders of each camera. Right? Here's a good one. I have folders of each camera. Okay? And then each camera goes in a separate folder. And then I also break the shoot up in subfolders. And this is a very complex video for what I usually do. But each of these folders is a segment of the video, and inside each segment is the group of clips. See, in this case, I only have 2 clips, so I didn't make separate folders for them. But that's how I do it. And I do it as soon as I get home, otherwise I forget. Last one, Patio Patterson says, full throttle will be no problem. It's the crashing that toasts CSCs. Totally valid point, Patty. A lot of times you'll be well under 65 amps even at full throttle, but as soon as you crash, you get a voltage spike, and that's what kills it, and the 80 amp will be more durable. Last things, thanks to Stephen Covington for a $2 super chat. Sorry, it's not much. Whatever you can give, Steve. Thank you so much. Johnny5 says, mind blown. I assume he's not being sarcastic, because he doesn't feel like his style, but I'm surprised that a guy like Johnny5, who is very knowledgeable about video production, I'm just impressed that he's impressed with my workflow. Cool. I will take the compliment, Johnny5. There you go. Let you get another look at it.
The videos that I made were just a bunch of files in a folder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for some I do that. For very simple, like the very simple ones where there's like 2 clips and all you do is put them together. Like I won't always make separate folders for that. But when you've got a project this complex, and this is my attempt to make a third-party editor be able to, and he has picked up a lot of FPV knowledge, but he is not an FPV pilot. So if I just hand him a bunch of clips, it's not going to be obvious to him what I'm doing or how they go together. So there you go. All right. Don't use just means I reshot the intro. That's all. Just means I reshot it. All right, guys. Time for our ranty topic. And this topic relates to some testing done, testing SharkByte and DJI's latency. And we're going to start with this chart from Mads Tech. Wait, before we start, Blunty, should we talk about how they're doing the testing? Because I think it's relevant.
Yeah. So I'm not 100% exactly sure. Like Mads Tech setup, I believe it's similar, but his seems to be a little bit different because the results are different, so it's hard to know. I don't know if I can tell you on that one. Like they're both, the idea behind both is photodiode. So you're shining an LED into a camera, and then you're looking into the goggle with a photodiode to see when the photodiode picks up a change on the screen. So that will show you the difference in the time from when the LED flashed to when it gets to the screen. So that should show the latency through the system. That's the glass to glass. That's the idea.
Yeah. And the LED lights up. It's like right in the camera lens, and it lights up and basically whites out the whole camera. And then the photodiode detects the photons coming from the screen. And then they're measuring with an oscilloscope. We can actually see if we've got this linked. Ryan and Jeff's testing. They're measuring with an oscilloscope the voltage rise, because the voltage across the photodiode rises, and that's how they're telling, like, how long. How can I zoom in on this? Dang it. Zoom. 150%. So here we can see this is where the LED light was enabled and was triggered, And this is the voltage coming from the photodiode, and it rises, and they measure when it first starts to rise and then when it reaches full brightness. And that starts to get at what we're going to talk about in this segment, Blunty, because Madstech had some kind of controversial results where he actually suggested that SharkByte had more latency than DJI under some conditions. And there's a lot of sort of wobbliness around these results. And one of the things I wanted to do in covering this is to say you can't just look at these numbers on a spreadsheet and go, SharkByte's slower than DJI. See, everybody, you suck. You got to really think about this.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle here. There's testing methodology. There's how the data is displayed. There's number of tests. There's like how you're testing, like what you're looking at. Is what you're looking at accurate? What's the there's just so many pieces to this puzzle. And I know that, specifically, I saw Madstech mention that, hey, there's a lot to this, and I did the best I could, and this is just some data, and don't take it as gospel. Yeah, so, I think all we can do is look at these and see what we get, and then try to make conclusions from what we can, I think that's kind of what we're trying to show.
Yeah, so here is Madstech's first testing, and he tested analog cameras with a Runcam Swift V2, and he got latency of average about 15 milliseconds, which is very expected. A lot of people were surprised to see that his low latency was only 5 milliseconds, and were like, how can you have less than 1 frame time of latency? And it just depends on where the sensor is scanning versus when the light comes on, is the short version. So that's not that controversial. But then he measured with a SharkByte module and a Dom V2 and a Scout HD, and he found a latency of 28 to 30 milliseconds. And given that DJI average latency, and given that DJI measures as low as 21 milliseconds, a lot of people were like, how could SharkByte have more latency than DJI ever?
Yeah. So I don't know. My answer is I have no clue.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty much what I'm going to tell you, is I don't have any clue. I think that there's a lot of things we don't know about these systems. I think there's a lot of issues with testing methodologies. I think there's a lot of discussion about frame rates, the way lines are drawn, scan lines, full frame versus half frame versus but I mean, there's so many pieces to these puzzles. I think it's like comparing apples and oranges with a needle that you're pulling the apple out with or something.
Right.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of layers to this, and it's hard to get good data out of this, because one thing that we'll look at, if you flip over to the Google Doc again with Ryan and Jess testing, you'll see that if you scroll down, their numbers, he found something interesting with the Runcam. So if you scroll up, the Runcam, the Runcam Nano HD had issues with, but if you look at the Micro HD result, right, and the one above it, basically they saw that there was a steadily increasing latency on the SharkByte systems for some reason, and it appeared to cycle after some time. So for some reason in this test, whether it was the capture, whether it was the LED, whether it was the system, it appears to possibly be the system. It could be the goggle timing for when the video comes into it, for the sync pulses. But for some reason, there's an expanding amount of latency over time that resets back to the low amount of latency after quite a long time. And one of the stances, he says it's 14 and a half minutes for the full cycle, for it to go from 3 to 19 and then back to 3. And so I just think there's so many pieces here that it's just hard to glean meaningful data across the board from this.
Yes.
It's just really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. So the fact that this latency was sort of stepwise increasing from 3 to 19 milliseconds and then back again, some people have speculated, maybe there's a buffer or something that is cycling. The point is that something was affecting the latency that no one knew what it was. And it's also interesting that the results from Ryan and who's the other guy? Ryan and Jeff, they're getting these really low numbers, 1.8 to 3.4 milliseconds for analog, whereas Madstech got 14 milliseconds. And, that could be the camera that they're using. I don't know if they were using the same camera. But you can't just take these numbers and walk away and say you have an ironclad conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, even so much as like, when Matstick did his results, he actually removed the lens from the Scout HD,
Right.
and his numbers were lower after removing the frontal lens from the Scout HD. So then there's like a question of like, is it like distortion of the LED? Is like, there's so many questions here.
How could having the Fresnel lens in there, like you've got the photodiode and it's like presumably taped to the lens, and then removing the lens and like you're taping it to the screen. Maybe it's just closer to the screen so it lights up faster, but that alone made a difference in his numbers.
Yeah, but obviously speed of light would like not, it's got to bounce like a bunch
No, not the speed of light, but the intensity of the light reduces the further you are from the screen. So the photodiode is simply receiving less light.
Interesting.
See, I don't know.
That seems, yeah.
So
I see what you're saying.
It would be easy. It would be easy to say, well, there's an oscilloscope and a photodiode, so obviously the numbers are right. There's a lot of test methodology to evaluate in here. Going back to the question of the DJI latency being lower than the SharkByte latency, I believe this is true, but there's a caveat, as always. I believe that DJI latency is, in fact, around 21, 22 milliseconds best case for low latency mode. That number has been replicated other times, and it is, by the way, consistent with what the DJI system reports in the lower right corner of the goggles. Once again, this is like the second or third time I've seen this, confirming that that number is accurate. So but it is interesting that the low was 17, the high was 39. It suggests that DJI is taking somewhat of an average, but the average exactly matches what they show. But as anybody who flies DJI knows, you start out with like 21 to 25 milliseconds, and as soon as you take off and fly away, it immediately goes up. So if you were to look at the actual latency during a flight, I think you would find that a lot of the time DJI was higher latency than SharkByte, but not all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just difficult to glean information. I think one of the other things too is like, I don't know, like why are the lows the same on the DJI system when one is running at double the frame rate of the other?
Yes, like I agree. Very questionable, very weird.
Yeah. And then why aren't the gaps in maybe because it's the scaling on the SharkByte modules that's causing the issue to not be the gap, to be the frame rate, but you would expect the high and low difference to be the frame rate, right? Because like the latency is going to be fixed on SharkByte. So you would expect the high and low to be the difference between the frame rate, but we're not seeing that.
Yeah. All right. I guess Seamanders in the Discord says isn't there an automatic gain control algorithm or auto exposure algorithm in play on the camera and on the display? So in other words, could the camera be turning the brightness up or down, affecting the result? Don't know the answer to that. The takeaway is, the first takeaway is that for anybody who doesn't deal with science and engineering on a daily basis, and I don't either, but I do have a, I went to Georgia Tech. I know a thing or two about science and engineering. This process whereby different people do different tests and release results, and then everybody goes, no, your test sucks. You got it wrong. And you go, oh, maybe he's right. And you go back and you do it again. This is just how testing and science is. So both Matstick and Ryan and what's his name? Jeff. Ryan and Jeff. These guys are doing good work and they're doing the best they can. And we just, it needs to be peer reviewed and evaluated. And, we'll see what happens. We'll get closer to the truth.
So one thing I want to throw out there is what I would like to see is somebody with a really nice slow motion camera do similar testing. I think that we could glean a lot of information from testing with a slow motion camera. A couple different things.
Like 1,000 FPS or something.
Yeah, maybe even, yes, I guess 1,000 would be 1 millisecond. So we might want to do faster than that to get in between. So maybe like 10,000 or something would be great. So you could see like 0.1 millisecond. But the thing I think would be interesting, right, is I want to see like, is it actually drawing the full frame that we think it is, or it's so fast we're not detecting it? And then also when we're drawing scan lines, right, on an analog system, when something comes into frame on an analog system, at what point does it come into frame? Like you're going to get half the basically on an analog system, for people that don't know, Chris Rosser put out a great video about this. But basically, he kind of re-explained it for anybody who doesn't understand. But analog draws basically 60 frames a second, but it's only drawing half the scan lines every time. So like you're drawing half the horizontal lines, right? Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah, correct. It's a half.
Okay.
It's 1/2 frame every 30 seconds, or every 60 seconds, 1 full frame every 30 seconds.
Or every 30 times per second.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, when you're drawing that half frame, I'm curious to know at what point, how many lines need to be drawn for you to know something is coming into frame, right? So how many milliseconds into the update, because it's drawing lines, it's not drawing all the lines at once.
Right.
At what point are you able to discern there's something there? And what does that look like to the human eye? I think it would be really cool to see those images like next to each other and see like, oh, here's what it looks like at each step. And like, here's when my eye could perceive it. And then, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that would be interesting data to know. Does it really take like half the frame to get enough so you could see the thing? Do you even need part of the next frame to like see the rest of it? How much does your eye make up? All those kind of things I think would be pretty interesting. So.
Yeah, and Robin Duckett in the YouTube chats asks, how are the scan lines of the camera sensor synced up with the scan lines of the LED? Because the LED screen is updated with scan lines, not with a global shutter. And if the camera has a global shutter, then that's anyway. There are a lot of different potential sources of accuracy here, and hopefully these numbers are sort of clustering around the truth and giving us valid information. But the fact that MadsTech removing the Fresnel lens from his screen made such a big difference in latency, average latency from 28 down to 23 milliseconds, that alone is a good indicator that there's probably a lot of sources here that maybe we haven't identified. I wouldn't have anticipated that. And as you point out, Blunty, then we have to ask how these numbers actually reflect on like how our eyes and our brain work and how relevant they are. So.
Yeah, like how much, like just real quickly, like if you're only drawing these lines and you have to identify something in the lines versus a full frame update from a system like SharkByte or DJI,
right?
Then at what point are we saying that, you know, like that full frame is showing you the whole thing, like you're going to see it, and then you're going to see the next thing, and then you're going to see the next thing,
right?
Whereas you're going to see part of it moving into the frame and part of it moving across the frame,
right?
And like I think there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. I would like to dig into more.
I think that's a really good point, and I've been thinking about that because if you ask somebody, can you just press a button as soon as the screen lights up? That's very simple, and basically your human reaction time is going to be typical human reaction time is going to be about a quarter of a second. You know, some people are a little faster, some people are slower, but it's going to be on the order of 100 to say 400 milliseconds. And you could make an argument that a 16 or 30 millisecond latency on the video display is irrelevant compared to the human reaction time. But when you're flying, you are performing a continuous process. You're not just waiting for a light to come on and then reacting. So you can see that tree coming and you can anticipate when you need to turn into it. And as you fly with a control system, you get used to the latency. And you learn to compensate for it. And it does matter. But that's why I think like the difference between 50 and 16 milliseconds, 1000% makes a difference when you're flying. Even though if you were to ask me to like press a button in response to a light, the difference that would not make is it would only make like a small difference.
Yeah, but wouldn't you press that button 15 milliseconds later?
Yeah, you would. But it would, let's say that the latency of the display changed by 15 milliseconds. You would press the button 15 milliseconds faster, 100%. Your average would go down. But if your time was 250 milliseconds, how much variance would there be in your human reaction time? It would probably be more than 15 milliseconds. So when you reduce the latency of the video link by 15 milliseconds, your time, it doesn't change that much. It's only a small fraction. I mean, you might argue it doesn't matter.
Yeah, like compared to total time or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I hate it when people make the argument, if human reaction time is 250 milliseconds, how could the 15 millisecond difference in the control link even matter? Like, it totally matters. Because you're performing a continuous process. You're not just reacting to a stimulus.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. Well, That's our little rant for today.
Yeah.
C. Manders
hopefully-
thinks automatic gain control is having an impact in the photodiode. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because if your screen is automatically dimming, then you're going to get a different response time versus like you're flashing a light, right?
Yeah, but how would the screen know whether the Fresnel lens is there?
But if the Fresnel lens is changing the amount of light that gets through it because it's like a distance deal, right? You have inverse square through the Fresnel lens. So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know either. Oh, it went down.
Yeah.
By removing the Fresnel lens, it went down. Maybe the Fresnel lens. We're just okay. We're gonna stop. Thank you to Mads Tech and Ryan Quellet and Jeff for doing this testing. Hopefully, we continue to get good results. I think let me do a takeaway here. We'll try to wrap up. I think a takeaway is that DJI has variable latency and SharkByte has pretty much non-variable latency. If you measure an impulse response like this, you'll get varying results. But I think a human's perception of the latency is around the average, and SharkByte on average stays consistent and lower, or consistent, whereas DJI goes up and down unexpectedly, which a lot of people don't like. The flip side is that DJI will go to a higher latency, but at least you'll have some picture, whereas SharkByte will go, no, bye-bye, which some people, that's Johnny Five's argument.
I will say real quick also that based on Ryan and Jeff's testing, Carl is looking in to see if there is an issue with timing on the clocks with DiviMath. So if there is in SharkByte, and that's why it's increasing and it's not testing methodology, they're digging in to find that out and we'll fix it. So
that's the beauty of SharkByte and HD0 is that they actually are engaged with the community and give a shit about people like Ryan and Jeff doing this testing. Carl, the literal owner of the company, as far as I know, is just like, oh yeah, hey guys, that is weird. Let me see if I can fix that for you. You don't get that with DJI. That's for sure.
If you go on like the DivMath group and just ask a question, Carl will respond with like why that feature makes sense or why it doesn't, or we'll put it on a list for you. I mean, it's definitely a different experience and it's good to have. So
yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the news. Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you, Blunty, for meeting up with me once again. It's always fun.
We always say it at the end of the show. I'm not sure how much it helps, but email news@fpvknowitall.com if you have any news to send us and you're still here. And then also go down
They're still
and hit
here.
that like button.
There's 584 people watching right now.
Well, all of you, email news@fpvknowitall.com.
No, only if you have news items.
That also true. Just and then also subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed somehow, if that's possible. Hit the thumbs up button and then also leave a comment for the algorithm because it really appreciates it. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Blunty. I am not Sam says I'm just here for Blunty's beautiful voice. Mads Tech is in the chat. He says, I'm stopping for a few weeks. I need my life back. I'm going to work on the setup more. I have some things to want to work on. Carl is amazing. Don't let him get you down, Mads Tech. Don't let him get you down, man. Take a breather. Do more testing. This is it. This is science. So peer review is the process of your peers telling you all the ways they think you effed up. You just got to take it. Unfortunately, YouTube is not your peers and they have no stake in the outcome and they can just tell you effed up even if they're wrong.
Also true.
And slow-mo guys, get in touch with us. Blunty wants to talk to you.
Yeah, or who's else? Smarter Every Day. I don't know. There's a list of people who have a slow-mo camera.
I think Rotor Riot just got a slow-mo camera. I thought I saw that Rotor Riot in one of the private chats. They may have gotten a slow-mo camera, or maybe Sean did. Let's Fly RC.
Go hit up Drew or Sean.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All righty, guys. We're just going to do it for us. Good night, everybody. See you next week.
Right. Later, guys.
Thank you.